Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I am Erwin van Hunen. I am in the lucky position to be your host today. And I will talk you through the slides, and then a bit later, actually, Vesa will take over and start to do demos. So let's get started for today. Before you ask, yes, we would like to mute the teams, but we're not ready yet. There are some technical reasons. There are some other reasons for that. We'll get there in the end, but for now, just please wait. We'll get the teams in due time. So what's up today? We go through the latest news, monthly summary, what happened in the P&P ecosystem, in the SharePoint development ecosystem. Then Vesa will do some demos and talk a bit about the SharePoint Framework 1.8 that is upcoming, and he will demo about the SharePoint Provisioning Service, which I think is really cool. So please hang with me and wait a bit later and see what that all is about. And then if time allows, we will have a Q&A where you can ask questions. Again, during the presentation, do not hesitate to write down your questions in the chat here. There's more people here. You're not alone, and there might be people around here that can answer these questions too. So a bit of a recap what this is all about. So we do basically every week a community call. We have a bi-weekly SharePoint Framework call. The next one is this Thursday. And then every other week we do the SharePoint generic or general development call, where we talk a bit basically about the rest that makes up the SharePoint development ecosystem. So things like CSOM, Graph, Power Apps, Flow, etc., PowerShell, everything basically. So 1 week, JavaScript, TypeScript, SharePoint Framework, the other week, the rest, effectively. And then we have the community call, and you're attending this one right now, that we do on a monthly basis. And the next one will be on the 9th of April. And basically, these are in sync with the releases that we do with the core library, etc., etc. A bit more links to remember. So all the documentation for SharePoint development are located on docs.microsoft.com. And if you go to AKMS SPDev docs, you'll find all the documentation there. This is continuously updated. And very important to point out, if you find an issue in those documents, you can change those. You can make a pull request to the documentation and be active there and make the documentation even better. We have videos on YouTube, quite a lot of videos actually nowadays. It's a long list of videos, and basically everything you want to know can be found in those videos. If you run into any issues regarding SharePoint Online, on-prem issues, technical issues, please do not hesitate to post that issue in the SPDev doc issues list.
Development issues. Sorry,
development issues.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah. By the way, you will notice how this goes. I say something and I make a mistake, then Vesa jumps in. That's how it works. That's just that you know. It's a rough time for him to not present. I understand that. So let's move on. The numbers, I will not bug you with all the detailed numbers here, but we see on a monthly basis that things are growing. Everything is growing. Visitors are growing. The views are growing. Everything is growing. It's incredible. It's wonderful to see those numbers grow every month. The number of tenants that are using the reusable components are increasing on a monthly basis. This is insane. Over 20,000 tenants there. And the number of HTTP requests that are made through the code are out of this world. It's just ridiculous. Those numbers, I cannot comprehend these numbers anymore, 12.2 billion. So it seems that we, with the community, are on the good way. We're doing good things. Reusable code that can help. And keep in mind, it's us, you that are in this call, and everyone else that make this happen. So the SharePoint Framework, these numbers are increasing too. It's crazy. It just is the best adopted technology ever released in the SharePoint ecosystem by Microsoft Development Technology. So keep on going. It's the future. Things are going good there. Something I really would like to point out. This is a weekly podcast, webcast. Give it a name. It's a video on YouTube. hosted by every week by Waldeck and Virsa, and a guest. And if you look at the thumbnails of these videos, you always see them laugh, and that is for a good reason, because it's actually a lot of fun. Make sure that you subscribe to these, follow them on a weekly basis. You will get insights in what has happened the week before in the development ecosystem, and they will always have very interesting guests that are talking about all kinds of topics and bring their view to the story. And a little note here, there we see Parker, the porcupine, the little icon there to the right, that is the PNP mascot, very dear to us. Any feature requests you have to SharePoint, please post them to the user voice. That's the way to do it. The engineering team actively looks at these and takes action. You see there's little stars behind the items here. That the blue star is they are working on it, and the red star will be released really soon. So it's already built, and they're in the testing phase right now. So the top 3 of the items, for instance, they are working on that right now. And the first one makes me very happy, because I've been wanting that for I don't know how long already, the ability to modify and manage metadata through the REST API. The second one comes very close to my heart too, for several reasons, and that is also in progress. And the third one has already been developed and will be released very soon, the single page applications for SharePoint. So that's quite cool. So this is the way to request functionality in SharePoint. So we released the March release of the core library of PNP PowerShell, and various other things came out. That happens usually starting on a Friday, and then over the weekend we start to release bits here and there. It has been out now, so the latest version of PNP Sites Core and PNP PowerShell is out. Has been released, available on NuGet and the PowerShell gallery, etc. We thank you all. There have been, and if I talk specifically for PowerShell, have been people that have been like turning the code inside out and looking at typos. There's many typos that were found, and that's great updates, I think. So thank you all for your contributions on what happened here and what has changed here. This slide gets, well, the slide doesn't get bigger, but the font gets smaller every month, because this list of people grows and grows. So thank you all. I remember that in the beginning of these calls, we were actually thanking everyone by name. That's impossible right now. So many people. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. Regardless of what you've been doing, we thank you. It can be a very big change. It can be a very small change. It can be a typo fix. Everything we thank you for. It just makes our code and our solutions better. Great work. Thank you. If you work on PNP code, or you do anything, or you write documentation or whatever, and your company is allowing you to do that during your work time, even better. Wonderful. And these people, these companies allow people actually to spend time to work on PNP. And if you're one of those people and you would like your logo here, please contact us, and we'll get your logo on this slide. So this is great work. So there's many companies that actually spend time on PNP because they use, for instance, the code in PNP in their products, for instance, and it becomes then they are really depending on PNP quality, and it means that if they have people working with the PNP code actively, it's sort of guaranteeing that the code goes forward and the quality goes forward. It's not only community members, or I would actually say that these people are also community members. They're just part of the same community. The only difference is that these people here are working for Microsoft, and that doesn't mean they do everything in paid time. Actually, many of these people do work for PNP in their free time. But just the difference is that these people are working for Microsoft, employed by Microsoft. So moving over to Virsa. It is time for your demos. I did it in 10 minutes, so you have actually quite a lot of time.
Wow, that was the fastest ever intro on those calls, which is pretty good. So I do apologize on the SharePoint Framework 1.8. We were planning to do a live demos in this call, and I actually even promoted it to be a live demos, and I unfortunately run into a nasty environmental bug, and I can't actually do that. So right now, what I'm going to do is focus on going through what is the main things around 1.8. Kind of a one step at a time. You'll see some new screenshots and new functionalities here, but I can't show them live due to quite a few reasons. Unfortunately, we're working on getting all of those fixed. We're working on getting the quality on the right level, and then we're shipping SharePoint Framework 1.8 relatively soon. So the feature set has been already locked, and now it's just a matter of making sure that the quality is in the right level. But again, I do apologize. Slides, not demos for the SharePoint Framework 1.8. For the provisioning service, which will move right after this section, we will do that live. So we will actually together live release the service, and you can test it live together with us. So I will walk through how the system actually works. Now, let's actually concentrate first on 1.8. So some of the status around this one. So the 1.8 content has been locked, obviously. One of the things, there's two internal things which we pushed to 1.9, which is obviously in the pipeline already, and you can pretty much assume that typically we release a version closer to larger conferences, and there's a SharePoint conference and build coming up later this spring. So you can kind of assume that somewhere around that time frame there will be another version. But the 1.8 is coming and happening during this month, which is the
maybe you should take over this presentation.
That is a good point. Take over the presentation. Thank you for moving on this one. I didn't even notice. You knew when I would clicking my keyboard. That was cool. So let me take over. Sorry for a quick swap of the slide. It will come in a second. There we go. So 1.8, like I said, it's going to go released during this month. So we're talking about days rather than weeks or months, and 1.9 is then coming later this spring. And that is the current plan. So obviously, let's concentrate on 1.8 and the content of this one if you haven't participated on our bi-weekly SharePoint Framework calls. So first of all, the big thing here is a general availability of Microsoft Teams development with SharePoint Framework. So you are able to create Microsoft Teams tabs using the SharePoint Framework experience, and including all of the controls and everything else and all of the goodies what we have on the SharePoint Framework side. So you can take advantage of that one in Microsoft Teams development. And I'll walk through all of these things, what they mean in practice in a second. General availability of single part app pages. This one actually is one of the top 10 items being requested. So we want to have an app pages, and we will be releasing app pages. And app pages basically are pages which people cannot configure. So after a owner of the site has created the page, it's kind of a locked down. So it's not a usable or editable by the end user. So it's a single part app page where we have a one part and one web part, which is basically then the functionality. It can take the full scale, it can get a smaller page, and all of that. The UI later note on what means on that one, you will see that in upcoming slides as well. But basically, we will give you a user interface when you are creating new pages. In the modern pages, you're able to select to be creating a app page, and I'm going to explain that one in practice in the slide. I can't show it, unfortunately. Like mentioned, we have some environmental issues in our eDoc. We have general availability of isolated web parts, and this functionality was around the fact that you can actually request permissions and access tokens specifically to a web part. So you don't no longer have to grant access tokens and permissions to call APIs in the whole SharePoint Framework level. You can actually request those permissions only in a web part level or a solution level. So that's really good as well. And then general availability of provider-hosted solutions in SharePoint. So this is the vice versa solution. So basically, if you have an existing Teams application and you want to run that in SharePoint, that is possible. Maybe on this one, I don't have a good slide and clarification on that one, but what it actually means is that then the future of Microsoft Teams development goes in the direction where absolutely we will have two different ways of doing Microsoft Teams tabs. We have the old ways of doing Microsoft Teams tabs, which is basically that you create a random website and you expose that as an iframe through the Microsoft Teams tabs. That's designed for ISVs. That's designed for SaaS services, which want to also provide their services inside of the Microsoft Teams experience. And then we have another direction, which is the SharePoint Framework way of creating Microsoft Teams tabs. And that's really designed for the enterprise developers. So when you're implementing anything related in the context of the enterprise, and just as well, yes, you can still be an ISV, so ISV which is implementing enterprise experiences using that model as well. But that's basically the future of the Microsoft Teams tab development. And then the SharePoint Framework library package support is coming as part of the 1.8 release. It will be through a local NPM catalog. I'm trying to explain what it means in practice in the upcoming slides as well. So let me actually go to the following slide. So I'll pinpoint some of the things which you probably actually haven't seen in the past calls because we haven't talked about this yet. But now that we're getting closer and closer to the release, this will explain how system will actually work. So, when you're creating a SharePoint Framework web part, you're able to configure if the web part is exposed in SharePoint. Is it exposed using Microsoft Teams tab, or is it exposed using a single part app page? And if the web part is being configured to be exposed as a Microsoft Teams tab, that solution will have this functionality available, which is sync to Teams functionality. So basically, you're able to select the solution in the SharePoint app catalog, and then you're able to click sync to Teams. And what it means is that that solution is then getting synchronized and pushed to the Teams. Synchronized and pushed to the Teams, and then it's being exposed as a tenant-level solution inside of the Microsoft Teams UI. So basically, this is then the way how we synchronize and deploy the local solutions, and we simplify the model of getting those SPPKG files deployed to the Microsoft Teams side. Now, you don't also need to create, if you are a technical person, you don't need to create that manifest file. We actually create all of the manifest files and exposure automatically for you. So you don't have to worry about creating the zip file, worry about the manifest and all of that. We actually dynamically create that. You can manipulate still the images, but based on the web part metadata, we dynamically create the needed manifest file. We push it automatically to the Microsoft Teams, and then your solution will be available there.
Sorry to jump in. Sorry here. A question that I have is like if you said it's tenant wide.
Correct.
And if you use the previews code, you were able to do it on a single team. Can you still do that?
Yes, yeah, it is possible still to do this in a single team site or in an isolated way in a certain set of people. So you don't have to click sync to Teams. You are still able to manually create a manifest file, and we'll give you documentation and guidance how to make that happen. So you're able to target a specific team with a subset of people, so your solution doesn't have to be deployed across the whole Microsoft Teams experience.
Okay.
PMP Publisher updates to sync to Teams. Yes, that's actually good feedback. We need to Erwin, as I'm talking, and can you actually add a note on that one? We need to make sure that that's possible from a CDCI perspective. Thank you for that. Cool. So that simplifies anyway the deployment of the solution, and then sooner or later we will absolutely release a support for ISVs in the store or app source to actually deploy these things as well. And that is still in the plans. I cannot actually provide an exact details and timelines at this point, but we absolutely want to make that scenario to happen as well. So you're able to build SharePoint Framework-based Microsoft Teams tabs, which are, for example, using Microsoft Graph to get access on the conceptual data and then exposed and being sold through the app source for the customers. So absolutely coming in the future. Now, the next slide, Teams tab configuration options. So this one was slightly awkward in the preview version of the Teams integration of the SharePoint Framework web parts, and starting from a GA version of the Teams of the SharePoint Framework web parts, Microsoft Teams implemented using SharePoint Framework, and the tab configuration option will be looking exactly like it is in SharePoint. And that means that you can also take advantage of custom controls, custom tab configurations, you can open up panels, you can open up pop-ups and all of that stuff. So you have the full flexibility of implementing custom functionalities in here. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Now, single part app pages. This is something which is really early mockup, so I didn't want to actually really have a big picture here because that UI is going to be changed. But let me try to explain briefly how this is going to work. So first of all, whenever a user goes and creates a new modern page in SharePoint, pretty soon there will be page layouts. We actually talked about that the page layout functionality is actually in the roadmap. Now, the page layout functionality will be exposed together with single part app pages option. So you're able to then select an existing page layout, or you're able to select a new page to be created using any of the web parts which are designed to actually work as a single part app page. So basically, as part of the web part properties, you're saying that, well, this is a web part which is designed to be exposed as a single part app page, and that means that it will be then visible in this create a page UI, and then you're able to configure that optionally if again configured in your web part manifest, and then a new page is being created which people cannot edit. So it's a single part app page, it's an app page which is not editable by the end users, and that's really the design related on this one. Good. I'll get back on the .NET Core timings after the 1.8 kind of a walkthrough of what's coming up. Now, what else? Domain isolated web parts. So this one, super important thing, which was planning to demo today again, but running into those small environmental issues, so trying to explain what it actually means. So as part of the 1.6, we released a Microsoft Graph and a custom API support for SharePoint Framework web parts. And what it meant was that you're able to request permission APIs to be granted for SharePoint Framework solutions. The downside of that implementation was that you basically granted those permissions to all of the solutions running in a tenant. So even though it was a, let's say, a web part which I implemented, which was requesting the calendar read permissions, if Erwin actually implemented a web part, that web part had access on the same permission model. And that's not necessarily an optimal situation if you want to be super strict on your security and permissions and everything else, and you're not quite sure on what are all the things running in your tenant. Well, first of all, you should absolutely know what's running in your tenant. Second of all, you absolutely be double checking what you're deploying there. But anyway, if you want to have that additional layer of security, the web parts can actually add its domain isolation option enable. And that means that whenever we are granting permissions, we are actually granting permissions specifically to that web part. Well, technically for that solution. So what happens in the background is that we are creating automatically, dynamically a Azure AD application for all of the solutions which are getting installed, and then you're able to go to the central admin of the SharePoint Online and approve those permissions. So the central admin UI will be understanding what are the functionalities, what are the solutions, if there are solutions which are requiring unique permissions or the permissions across the whole SharePoint functionality. So really cool thing as well. And the approvals of the approvals going to be fixed with a single app page. Approvals of permissions probably, or the approvals of the app pages. Yes, that's going to be fixed. Absolutely. Good point from Raymond. Now, one more thing which I wanted to talk about in the context of 1.8 is the library component type. So this one we were not quite sure can we get it in 1.8, but it's actually there, and my animation is slightly messed up. But let me quickly explain what it actually means. So the library component will be released as 1.8. We've been testing that. There is one downside related on the library component. So it works like people actually assume. So the library component is a kind of a utility component. So you can actually deploy an SPPKT file which contains, for example, locking and whatever controls, reusable controls and all of that. And then multiple web parts are referencing that centralized set of services. And that will then reduce the bundle size. Bundle size meaning that it will reduce the page loading time of the browser, which will then increase the performance of the page, because you don't have to actually include the same piece of code to both of the web parts. You can actually dynamically download the code which has been deployed on a tenant in runtime. And that's a really important and a cool functionality. We actually use this model also for a lot of the first-party experiences, so we want to provide this to third party. Now, the only challenge around this one is that this works runtime really well. But when you're actually bundling your SPPKT file, when you're doing development, you will need to be able to reference that npm package, which is your library package, somehow. Either putting that library package to npm, which sounds weird, which is probably not the way you want to actually expose and do development with enterprise customization, but you can actually put it, for example, host it from the Azure DevOps, VSTS, or using whatever local catalogs to be actually in runtime when we're bundling your web part code to be able to reference that code. We're looking into having this fully documented for a few different options. And by the way, who was it? Vartman was asking about NPM linking. That is one way of actually handling the situation as well. So there's a few different ways of handling that situation on development time when we are bundling those web part codes, so the references will be resolved properly. But that's pretty much the library component. Super technical stuff, maybe for some, but wanted to walk through those capabilities. And like I said, I can't unfortunately demo these things right now live, which is a pity, but we'll get there sooner or later. Now, Erwin, did I miss any good questions on the Iron Window related on?
No. Well, people seem to be very, very excited about the library component, and I share that excitement.
Cool. That sounds good. Oh, and that's actually a good point from Will. Awesome. Thank you for asking that. Any news about styling custom web parts sections with colored background? Funny enough, the writer of that documentation is in this call and was just talking something, right, Erwin? So that
that was me. Yeah.
So we're using Erwin for some of our documentation work, and that work is going to be released as part of the 1.8 release. So the documentation, how it works, the sample with it, is going to be out as well, right, Erwin?
Yeah, correct.
No pressure. No, I know that it's actually in a good status because we provided we have sample code already how it works. It's just a matter of making sure that we get it documented properly and as simple samples for community to reuse.
Correct, Ralph. That's only online.
Yeah. Only online. So that's actually an interesting discussion before I will actually go to the next slide. So let's do a quick recaps on the Iron Window. So obviously all of the stuff which we're releasing 1.8 and all of this stuff is going to be in online. And the reason why it's going to be in online and not in on-prem automatically is that we do not control your server-side code. So we can't actually push any automatic code to your servers. And that means that only way and only time we can refresh the on-premises supported SPFX versions is when we are releasing a major version or a service pack or whatever for on-premises. And that's why SharePoint 2016 Feature Pack 2 is still on the SharePoint Framework 1.1 level, and the SharePoint 2019 is going to remain in 1.4.1 level, at least for a while. Now, will it be the version pumped at some point? Potentially, maybe. We'll see. It depends on the demand. It depends on the requests from the customers. Good. Now, let's move away from a highly technical, highly deep dive on the technical stuff to slightly more lightweight, but I think this should be super interesting as well. So this is, how would I put this in this has been a massively long story, and Erwin knows this, but the provisioning and remote provisioning and the provisioning engines is an idea which we've been actually kind of started working on since 2012. It's now 2019, and sure, we've been releasing a first version of the remote provisioning model. Well, the mock-up started in 2013, and then the PMP provisioning engine came to be visible back in 2015. And the key point of the provisioning was all the time is that we want to have a simple way for people to reuse the content and simple way to make sure that they can deploy their solutions in future proven ways. And that's really the key. We need to have a automated package. We need to have a packaging model where we are able to create a tenant scope templates, not just for SharePoint, for other stuff as well, which we're able to then apply to tenants, and we get the same results across all of the tenants. And now the SharePoint Provisioning Service is really the one of the visual elements around this journey as we move along, going forward and adding capabilities. So let me explain what this is all about. And we will do a live release of this one during this call. Now, the lookbook, SharePoint Lookbook, is something which was released back in Ignite 2018. Really awesome story around, hey, these are the pictures and these are the experiences which you can build using modern SharePoint. So really cool looking stuff. If you go to the lookbook URLs, you can see awesome looking portals and awesome looking functionalities. But obviously, pictures are pictures, but wouldn't it be insanely cool if we would be able to apply and create actual sites and demo content based on those lookbook sites? So that it's not just you as a external non-Microsoft employee. You can see Microsoft people demonstrating cool-looking portals, but it's like, well, where can I get that stuff to my tenant? Well, what if we would actually provide that for you? And that's really the trick what we're doing here. So the SharePoint Provisioning Service is going to go public preview during the demo section of this after a few slides. So we're going to do that together during the demo, just for the sake of it. We'll start public preview of this one right today, and we'll keep on doing a public preview release, as in quotes, a beta release, until we're 100% sure that everything is fully polished and we keep on evolving the engine and all of that. But basic idea is that you go to the provisioning.sharepoint PMP, and you as a tenant administrator, you can apply any of the provided templates to your tenant as an example content. Or pretty soon, you're able to actually provision solutions which we from Microsoft are actually providing available in the service as well, like a custom learning guidance and a few other guidance solutions which will be in the centralized service. What the service actually does is that it uses the remote provisioning models. It automatically deploys the needed customizations in the tenant level and configures the content in the site collections and site level. So basically, depending on the selected template, you either get a one site collection with example content, or you might actually get something more. You might get actually custom Webparts and other example content available, like hub sites and site designs in your tenant level. So it's a really important thing also to look on detail on the template selection, what the template does actually contain. All of the templates in here are being released as an open source templates as well, so you are able to actually use them outside of this service as well. So as an example, because this service actually requires quite heavy permissions against your tenant, and if you don't feel comfortable of granting those permissions to this service, you are able to use all of these templates outside of the service as well. So you would be actually then using the PMP PowerShell or the CSM Core to make those things happen. Now, quickly, just previewing some of the templates. So we'll start with a 9 SharePoint Lookbook templates today, which is pretty cool. And we add additional templates during the spring. We'll probably have a few more templates quite fast, and then there's a slightly longer break until we get closer to the SBC. But what we wanted to do is provide you a set of templates which look like an example modern portals, which we actually demonstrated in Ignite 2018. Which will make your life probably easier, because you can then easily understand what's possible in modern SharePoint and building cool looking portals, which you can then expose using a browser or in the context of Microsoft Teams as an example, which is completely understandable scenario as well. Now, how does the whole system work? Just to quickly explaining this one, because this is SharePoint Dev community call. We have a centralized multi-tenant application registered in Azure AD, which is provisioning SharePoint Whenever you are selecting the template to be applied, you will be requested to grant the needed permissions, which are pretty high, and that's why we provide the whole of the service, the templates available outside of the service as well. All of the content what you're seeing is the service is actually available in a GitHub, and that repository is already open. I just opened that 5 minutes before this call. So the templates and structures and the content, which you can see actually inside of the service, is available in the GitHub. Now, when you select the template, it will actually add a message to web job storage queue, and then we have a separate web job which is taking care of the processing. We'll come into more details on the selected technologies and why a web job, why not an Azure function slightly later. Right now we're concentrating on getting this one live. There are reasons on all of these decisions. But the web job is then using the PnP provisioning, the tenant templating model, to actually apply the customizations on top of your existing tenant. So it's using the PnP core extension and then Microsoft Graph and SharePoint REST APIs and CSM extensions to actually operate against your tenant. Now, there was a good question for Wartman. Is the code of the service available? It will be. It won't be there today, but it will be open sourced later this spring. The reason why it's not there actually today is because I'm being lazy. Well, no, not really. It's because I ran out of time having the needed discussion with our legal. So there are certain legal prerequisites which we need to go through related on open sourcing this kind of a service. And that's still something which we needed to work during the spring. So that we needed to prioritize on getting it out first. But everything will be open source. If you want to build something similar for your customers in the future, absolutely possible. We'll provide you our documentation of the architecture, the models, and everything else as such. So that's one way of using the assets in here. Now, let's actually do this in practice. So let me go one step forward and one slide. Then there we go. Now we're in the public demo section. So let me share my screen. And crossing fingers that screen sharing actually works. It should be working, but you never know. So let's select that one. And somebody needs to confirm when the screen sharing is working. We're apparently looking Google from 2092 or something like that. Computers look like that when I started my computer studying. Excellent.
I see your screen.
Excellent. So whenever Erwin started computer studying, computers looked completely, no, just kidding. Sorry, Erwin.
When I started, there were no computers. We did everything on calculators.
Yeah. Anyway, so, and we're always doing this with Erwin, so no problems with that. So let's actually see how the services look like. And right now, you can actually still see that it's marked to be in internal testing. So I will actually start one web job on the background, which will update that text to be refreshed properly. And right now, the service is still actually not functioning for you. So give me 2 minutes and we'll get that one up and running as well. So let's wait. Let's not wait until the system is actually updating itself. Let me explain how the system actually works. So we start with a provisioning SharePoint PnP as the URL. This might actually get integrated even to the tenant admin at some point. It really depends on the demand of this kind of a service in the future. So please do give us feedback. We need to understand, is it worthwhile for investing and what kind of templates you actually need to do. And now if I scroll down, I can actually see that there's quite a few templates. These are promoted templates, welcome pages, and there's quite a few other templates available. Now, in a second, actually, you will see some of these templates getting hidden because not all of them are ready to go live at this point. So let me actually do that right away. And so I'm going to be here, and let's actually do this together. So I'm going to take my Azure application and Azure instance. You can't actually see anything too confidential in here. We double-checked that earlier today. We're going to do application settings, and we're actually going to do this together, live release of the service. So I'm going to go here. We have test environment, which is equals true, and I'm going to set that to false. Oh, and there we go. And I'm going to click the save. And there we go. It's no longer a test environment, which means that now, if we get back on the front page, in a second, we can actually see some of the templates getting removed. Whenever it's a bit of small caching. And there we go. That was relatively fast. You can see those templates which are not meant to be in the live release, they are not yet available for you. So technically, this is already now functioning for your tenant as well. But bear with me, give me 2 minutes, I'll show how the system actually works. So you're able to have a look on what kind of templates are available. The template names and texts, we're still adjusting them. That's one of the reasons we are still in a public beta. So we keep on polishing the pictures, we keep on polishing the texts and the descriptions of the whole thing. But let's say that I want to have this relatively simple template applied to my tenant. I can actually have a look on the content of the templates, and that's pretty cool. I get a detailed description what the template actually contains, and in this case it is a new site collection using communication site template. It has a custom welcome page. The custom welcome page has a lot of web parts on it, and it could be custom web parts as well, absolutely supported. We also provision 7 news articles available and some sample image content to be available in the site collection. So in this case, there's no customizations, but it's mainly content which is getting applied on the tenant. And I want to reinforce this message. It's important to double check what the template contains, because some of the templates do contain, for example, tenant level themes or SPPKG files, as in customizations, which might be then exposed throughout the tenant. So you need to be careful, carefully select and test the template before you decide to apply on that. Now, the full template layout looks pretty awesome. There's some cool stuff, recent sites, functionalities. No, that's really cool. And there might be some prerequisites as well. In this case, the prerequisites are basically that you are a tenant administrator, which is a pre-requirement, and you have an existing tenant. And it only works in English tenants for now, and we do apologize on that. I am, as an example, from a bilingual country, so 100% understand that it would be nice to have multiple other languages supported. Now, whenever I'm selected the template and it's like, awesome, that's a brilliant template, I can just click add to your tenant. I click that button, it's going to do a consent. In my case, the consent has actually already happened, so it's not going to bring me the organizational consent, but you need to be a tenant administrator to make that happen. And there we go. The next step is then to fill parameters. So based on a selected template, there might be small adjustments on the parameters, which you're actually seeing here. As an example, now we're creating a composer landing. What's the email address where we want to get the notification when the site collection has been created? And let me do something unique here, because I'm using this as my test tenant. We're validating the site URL, so we're not actually overriding an existing site. To be fair, if needed, you can actually do that as well. So it is possible to apply on top of existing site. If I can actually find, that's probably, is that a existing site collection? Just double checking that. Okay. Yes, there we go. So if you apply on top of an existing site collection, it will mean that we will actually potentially override, for example, the welcome content, and then we're adding additional content on the site collection. And that means that you need to double check and confirm what are we actually using and what are you actually doing here. So you are able to cancel and then get rid of the things and do something unique. So you'll get a unique site collection, and we're able to validate that. Now, I can also adjust the theming automatically. So if I'm, for example, if this is my test tenant, which I'm setting up for some customer or to my own company, which is having, let's say, orange default color, and I want all of the new demos tenants to use the default color at being orange, I can actually select that from the list of the existing themes. So these are themes which are being exposed from the tenant which we're signed into. So we're being signed into right now, in this case, on the SharePoint SharePoint.com tenant. So you can always see from this tenant, these are the themes which are available. So in our case, let's not actually apply a theme. I will click provision. It will tell me how long is the estimate for creating that and making that happen. In this case, seems to be 5 minutes. I will click confirm. We will get a notification that the provisioning of the template has started. And few things to notice here as well. So we will get an email from SharePoint when a new modern site is ready for you to access. There is a potential, let's say, risk. If you open up this one and then start doing F5, you might actually interfere with the provisioning process. So it is a worthwhile and it's recommended to wait for the email to actually arrive before you go to the site collection. But basically you can see the site URL there. In this case it's like 3 to 4 minutes probably for the provisioning to actually complete with an example content as well. So let me actually double check. I'll put that one on one of my screens so I'm able to see what's happening on the site. Now let me actually double check which of these, and that's actually one. Cool. So at the same time, if I go now, I'm back on the front page. Well, that's provisioning. Let's actually see if we have already updated. It is still saying internal testing. Didn't I actually submit those changes? Let me actually get rid of that. Maybe our sync is still updating, but the setting has been already flipped. You're able to actually start using this service, even though the text will be updated slightly later. Was there a question coming? No, that was just the background noise on the things. So right now the request, and I can actually see from the backend that there's quite a few requests already running. So now if I go here, if I right click that one, open that in a tab, we can see that the site collection, we're getting obviously authenticated against the site. There's still the site collection existing, but it's still applying the customization. So we need to wait until the appliement of the template is completed and we'll get an email at that point. So let me actually go to my Outlook address to wait for the confirmation. Whenever that's coming. That's an old one, but we can actually see live when it's actually then coming available. Now that we're waiting this to happen, Erwin, any questions what I potentially missed at this point?
No, I see questions of people are thinking of like integrating this with other environments. So Eric, for instance, was asking if it would be able to embed this in Power Apps. I replied already that there is currently no API around this service. This is effectively a standalone service that you cannot consume in other environments. But as the templates are open sourced, including the imagery that you saw on the homepage, everything is located in that repo. You would be able to wrap that yourself into an environment. You will have to be a bit creative with Azure Functions maybe and flow calls to Azure Functions. But behind the scenes, there is no other magic going on than the PnP provisioning engine.
Correct.
When we were building these templates, we were just testing this all by just using PnP PowerShell.
And that's actually
how
good.
The templates have been built.
So SPDEF provisioning templates. In this session, I haven't actually been there, but this is now opened a few minutes before this call. I actually open up this repo. So if you want to use these templates also without the service, you can actually go to the tenant folder in this case, and you can actually see all of the templates which we are currently working on, and you're able to actually see, as an example, that brand template, or in our case, let's see which one we selected, the Contoso landing. That is actually the content what you're seeing in the portal as well. So the system works in a way that we actually have the whole content which you're seeing in the portal managed and maintained in GitHub. So that way we can actually track who's doing any edits on the pages and when there's a new version, and we get the historical things in GitHub. And then we synchronize all of this content so it will be then exposed through the service using the UI.
Also, I would like to bring up, if you're new to the PnP provisioning engine and you want to learn about how to use it, this repo is a great resource for getting started, because we have so many templates there that are somewhat more complex, and it shows you all kinds of different scenarios.
Yes, and that's a good point actually to also mention. So that's the metadata, and that's the images and everything else. Every single or majority of these templates, unless they're also stored in their own isolated GitHub repos, have a source folder. And you can go to the source folder and you can actually then see a template.xml, and template.xml is actually the template. So this is the template which we just applied programmatically do that site collection, including the web part customization, including everything else, and to that tenant. Now, obviously, nobody is creating this stuff manually, so we do have tools on creating these things manually or exporting from the existing site. And during the spring, we'll definitely do webcasts and explanations how these things can be actually created manually as well. Right, Erwin? We haven't actually agreed anything, but we definitely need to have a video how to actually make this happen manually, because it's not like anybody's creating this manually. That's just insane.
No.
So,
well, partly. Yeah.
Partly, yes.
Yeah.
So how we actually created this template is that we created the actual site, and then we extracted, then we did some manual magic, and then that's the way it actually worked. Now, in my case, we got the email address or email notification available. There's a Contoso Enterprise landing has been now completed, and enjoy your newly created site. There's the link. I will click the link. There's my site collection, crossing fingers, and everything is looking awesome. Everything is awesome. But basically, we got the template, example content, example images, example presentations, and other files available in the site collection, using the custom stuff, using the selected templates. And in this case, it's one thing to maybe to notice, we are working on supporting additional modern pages capabilities. So if I go back on the template selection, let me go here, and it was this one, we can actually see that the original template has a gray background on the header. Right now, our engine does not yet support that. It's going to support that relatively soon, but if you need to take advantage of that one, it's nothing more than going to change the look. And then header, and we wanted to see a blue header there based on the theming, obviously, and a save. And now we're already pretty close to the actual template which was selected. So that's how it then works.
I see a question here from Anthony. He was wondering if the site collections already have been pre-created in his tenant. No. But com sites and modern team sites are actually created within seconds. So the engine actually creates, the service creates the site collection for you. And that will just take a few seconds.
Yep. And if you, depending on a template, depending on so as an example, if we go in here, if we go in the root, and if we go to the team site, which is Contoso team site in here, this is actually Office 365 group associated site. So that will actually create a new site collection using group associated team site template, not a communication site. So again, depending on the selected template, the template content looks slightly different. And we've been trying to be pretty detailed on what is actually getting provisioned based on the selected of the template.
We have a question here from SARS, by the way. If I mispronounce your name. The question is he missed the beginning of the presentation, and he's wondering when this is going to be available. Well, now, as of today.
As of today. So there it is. Now It's actually updated. This service is currently available, preview across the world for any tenant. It is available right now in the address of provisioning SharePointBnB.com. We will release a blog post around this announcement. In 10 minutes, immediately when I'm outside of this call, I will click buttons and get the blog posts out. So that's.
There was a question here, another one. It's actually an important question. The question is, can you reverse the provisioning? So delete the site, also remove the custom session, the themes. No.
Yes, that's a classical challenge in SharePoint. SharePoint doesn't actually support deletion of things, and deleting any existing site collections or content would be highly risky for us to automate in any other way. And that's also one of the main reasons why we really encourage to use the templates and double check the templates and analyze them before you would be potentially using them in your production tenant. So please use a test tenant or a trial tenant, or one of the things, if you're a developer, please do remember you can actually get a free tenant around or using the Office 365 developer program. Where do we have this? That's the tenant template. Did I have a link on that? No, I didn't. I will need to add a link in here. But you're able to actually get a free tenant using Office 365 developer program, which is the easiest way to get a free tenant for your usage if you don't have one. How do we report bugs? There's a submit an issue link on top, which is one way of reporting that. And that is the easiest way to then report a bug. This one actually goes to the SP DevDocs issue list, and we will introduce a new label in here, which is around the provisioning service, and then we'll start triaging those separately. The reason why we selected and chose the SP DevDocs is that it's the centralized location to report anything related on SharePoint development issues. So super important thing. And like noted a few times, this is in preview. There will be still some issues, but we're looking into, we need to get more usage so we're able to understand all of the different scenarios, because there's quite a few variables to consider.
Yeah. There's another question here from Mahesh. He's wondering how this can be going faster, because out-of-the-box modern site creation takes a few seconds. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't. The engine itself, of the service itself, behind the scenes, uses the same method to create a site collection as if you would create a site collection through the normal UI of SharePoint Online. But then, after the site collection has been created, we start to apply that template, and that means uploading images, documents, PowerPoint files, creating lists, fields, etc., etc., etc. And that just takes time, unfortunately. Yep. So there is currently no way to make that faster.
So, and that's actually the one of the key points why this is future proven. The why it takes time is that we do exactly the same operation as a person might be doing manually. So uploading a document, that might actually take a while. So therefore, uploading a document programmatically using the remote provisioning techniques is actually slower than using server-side API. But we are doing this in a future-proven way because it mimics the end-user behavior in the UI. So, but you don't have to do that manually because we're using the engine and the templates to make that happen. Now, yep. There was a question related. This is only for modern, not for classic, and that is true. All of the templates are modern templates, and that is by design. There was also a question related on any customization. So SharePoint Starter Kit is a good example of a much more complicated customization. So this one actually has 3 different site collection. It has a SharePoint Framework solution with 17 custom web parts and 7 extensions, custom site designs, and tenant themes. You should not necessarily apply this to your production tenant, but it's an awesome set of examples how to build SharePoint Framework solutions and customizations. And what's more important, everything related on those web parts, everything related on the starter kit is all open source. So you're able to actually find the source code of all of those web parts directly from GitHub. You're able to take advantage of them. But the starter kit is something which was released back in last spring in SBC, and that required that you are using PnP PowerShell to get it installed. And one of the asks which we were getting all the time is that you need to make the provisioning more simplified. Do not mention PowerShell, it's too complex. We want to have just click through how to install the templates, and that's precisely what the templating engine and the provisioning service is providing. So one more time, there's the workshop site. I want to have this one in my tenant. Add to my tenant, awesome. Click that one. We're basically checking the permissions. Azure AD is every now and then slightly slow. And there we go. There's my Contoso workshop. It's going to double check is the URL free or not. Just validating, making sure that I know, is it free or not? It is free, and provision and confirm. And within 2 minutes, I will have a workshop site collection with example content, example structures, example web parts available within my tenant. So, one more, can we apply after creation of the site? Yes, you can. So it will apply the template on top of existing site if the site already exists. But it's important to understand that we might actually override, for example, the welcome page content. So yes, you're able to apply on top of the existing site. If the provisioning actually failed to do whatever reasons, you're able to reapply the same template as well. That's by design in the provisioning engine. So, yeah.
Right. It's almost. This is amazing. I love it. Yep.
So let me flip back on the slide. So
exactly.
So we are really excited. And Erwin, do you want to close the call? But I can't because I'm so excited. We want your feedback.
Waiting for the deck.
Exactly. We definitely want everybody's feedback. If you're running into issues, what are the exceptions, and then we need to understand. We'll help to investigate what goes wrong. If the templates need changes, let us know. All of that feedback is more than welcome. We will keep on evolving the templates. We will keep on evolving the engine. We will keep on evolving the service, and all of that based on the feedback which is coming from you. So hopefully people find this interesting.
Great. There was a last question I would like to answer, and that one was from Matt, and he says, it appears that I cannot replace the site at the root URL. And is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Currently, the root site collection is not a modern site. It's a classic site. We only work on modern sites. However, Vesta?
It is already public that for new tenants, the root site will be a communication site, and we will be releasing a PowerShell commandlet, which will give you the capabilities of transforming your existing root site collection to be a modern site. So to be a communication site, to be precise. So we give you tools on transforming your root site collection from the root of the tenant, which is a classic site, to transform in place as a communication site. It is already in public roadmap. I can't give you an exact date on that, but it's coming.
Right. So next Thursday, please all join us in the SharePoint Framework meeting that is happening coming Thursday, where we will have two demos, one by Laura Kokkarinen and one by Nandeep. Laura will talk about a web part that is actually quite a nice functionality that lists all those teams that are in your tenant, but you don't have access to, or you're not a member of. So normally, right now, it's a bit difficult to find which teams are available. This web part will list those teams, and you can actually join them from that web part. And Nandeep wrote a web part that actually integrates your Google Fit data, which is also quite cool. So make sure to join next Thursday and have a look at these great demos. And that was it for today. We actually had already quite a Q&A. It is 6 o'clock, at least here in Sweden. It is 6 o'clock. It's probably 7 o'clock, but not probably. It's 7 o'clock already in Finland. So let's call it a day. It's not probably 7 o'clock. No, I think there's some logic behind times. I remember something. Thank you for today, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.